Hey guys, today we're going to be making a Spring Boot application that uses Hibernate, JPA, and it's going to persist objects into a MySQL database. So first things first, we're going to create a new Maven project. Select Next, a simple project, skip the archetype selection, group ID, and give it a name like simple Spring Boot. Make sure you set the packaging to war. That should be it. Now that we have it here, we can go into the pom.xml file and set up some dependencies. So into the XML editor, and let's get cracking here. So set up dependencies. Dependencies, if I can spell it right. And I'm just going to copy and paste some because it takes a long time to write them all out. I'll be sure to include them in the description, so you can easily just copy and paste it like I did. But the main gist of it is Apache Tomcat embedded server, Spring Boot, MySQL, Spring Boot Starter Web, and JPA, of course. And we have to include a parent. So then we just put it here, otherwise we'll get some errors here if we don't do it. So yeah, just like so. Wait for it to load. And lastly, we have to create a build plugin. org.springframework.boot artifact ID Spring Boot Maven plugin. That should do it. But I forgot to include the plugin tag, so I'll just put that in there. Yep, and that's good to go. Yep. So now we can make our resources folder. Sorry, our web app folder. So a new source folder. src main web app. And let's bring this to the top. Java build path. Orders and export. Up, and just in front of Java. That should do. Meta web inf folder, web-inf, and inside that views. Inside the resources folder, we're going to create our application.properties file. Properties. And what we put inside here is just simple stuff like where our resources are located and our MySQL and our data source details. So our MySQL username and password, that sort of thing. So spring.mvc.view prefix equals web inf views. And I'm just going to copy the rest in to save time because this video is going to be quite long. So make sure you pause it and copy it. Over here you put your database's username, database's password, database's username, database's password, the type of database we're using. So in this case it's a MySQL database, but we can also use an in-memory database called H2, but we're not going to do that for this video. Over here we're using the dialect of InnoDB for MySQL, but there's many other different dialects we can use. So that should be it. Now we're going to create our packages, org.neil.spring boot, and create some more packages. This is our data access object package. We're going to create a model package and a controller package. Controller. Inside here, we're going to create our main, and we're going to create our entry point for the Spring application. Spring Boot application, and we're going to create our static main method. Spring application.run main.class, or whatever you named your class, and inside here args semicolon to end the line, and that should be good. Except one more thing, we're going to add a component scan and an entity scan. Component scan org.neil.simple spring boot start, which means everything on .spring boot onwards. And we're going to copy this and change it to entity scan. Entity scan. Add the imports and change this to enable JPA repositories to allow persistence to happen. Now let's run it and test if our database connection works. Yep, so our database connection works. It didn't give us an error, so that's good. Let's go into our controller class now. Let's call this employee controller. Give it the annotation of controller. Give it the annotation of controller. Add the import. Get mapping. Employee. This is going to be our employee page. Public string employee. Show employee. Return employee. And add the import. And one more method. Public model and view. Create employee. Employee. Can't spell. And we're going to take in two parameters from this. Request mapping from the get request. So it can employee name, string name, and their salary. Salary, string salary. And we're taking salary as a string rather than an integer because it gets passed in as a string through the web request, through the HTTP request. And then we're going to convert the string into an integer. Is diz allowed for this location? Get mapping. And we're going to call it create employee. Create employee. Oh, sorry, request param. That should do it. We're going to create a new model in view object. New model and view. E. Create. E. Employee. Employee. We're going to create the model with an employee now. Employee equals new employee. I'm going to pass in the name and the salary as an integer. So we're going to convert it to an integer. Return model in view. Let's create the model called employee now, and it's going to be inside dot model. So we're going to have a string called name, private string name, private integer, and we're going to create getters and setters for this. Before that, we're going to make employee an entity and also a table. So we're going to make it associated to the table called employees, and we're going to create the getters and setters now. You can either put in the column notation here, or we can do it for the getters and setters. For the getters, sorry, which is what I'm going to be doing. So we're going to do column ID, not null, generated value, and we're going to set the strategy to generation type dot auto, which is in enumeration. We're going to import all these I can't talk today. We're going to import all of these what's the word for them? I forgot. I'm going to import all of these annotations. That's it. I couldn't speak today, I'm sorry. Column name equals salary. Column name equals name. And that's pretty much it for the employee class, except we have to create a constructor now. Public employee, name, string salary, int salary, dot name equals name, dot salary equals salary. That should fix the error up here. Now we're going to go into MySQL Workbench and create the table. I set my localhost password to root, but it might be different for you, so make sure you know it. This is my employee schema or database. I'm going to create a table. I'm going to call the table employees and create an ID as a primary key and not null. So make sure you select primary key, not null, and auto increment. I'm going to set name now as a column, and that should be good, and salary as an integer, and that's pretty much it for the table. So I'm going to create the table, and this is the code to create the table in SQL. Click finish. Close all of this. Yep, so this is our empty table here. Now I'm going to go create the data access object for employee. So many tutorials don't explain what a data access object is or the purpose of it, and simply I'm just going to explain it. It's to create a layer of abstraction between your entity and the database to allow persistence to happen. It talks to Hibernate, so there's no real connection between the data access object and the employee except for its CRUD functions. CRUD means create, read, something, and delete. Stands CRUD repository. I'm going to set this to employee and set this to integer. Now notice this isn't the primitive type integer, it's rather the class type integer. I'm going to give it the annotation repository and import repository, and transactional. So transactional means anything that's used to persist, do any ORM functions. And we're going to create two methods: list employee, find all, public employee all, public employee. I'll explain this in a second. Find by ID, integer ID. Now these are Hibernate specified functions. So if you name this anything else like get employee by ID, it wouldn't work. So you have to use the actual terminology here, and this is what we're going to be using, these two methods here. So that's pretty much it for the employee DAO. And inside our employee class, we're gonna, not employee class, employee controller class, we're going to be using the employee DAO to save the employee into the MySQL database. So we're gonna create an employee DAO instance now. I'm going to make this private. Now we simply can't instantiate this class because it's an interface, so what we have to do is autowire and Hibernate, Spring will sort of inject the class through dependency injection into this, so then we can use it to save it into the database. So employee DAO.save employee, and this should persist it to the database. So remember, anything that persists anything to a database has to be given this annotation here, transactional. Yep, and now let's get into the HTML side of things. So inside our first we have to, we configured application properties, all good. Now we can create a JSP file. Employee.jsp. Called it employee. Yep. And I'm lazy, so I'm just going to copy pre-existing code that I wrote before. So I'm just going to copy this here. Essentially, this is just a form with an input and another input, text input, and a submit button. You can pause it here and copy this if you like, or you can make your own form. Really up to you. I'm going to create another JSP file called create employee.jsp, and this is just going to be a simple file that refers to the model and gets the name of the file, gets the name of the employee, or injecting it before, putting it in the database, persisting it in the database. So let's try and run the code and see what happens. The model in view has to be, this one has to be called create-employee. I made a mistake. So Alt-Shift-R, I believe, to change it, and click OK. Let's run it. Hopefully it works. So what? Come on. Yep. Up and running. Localhost 8080. Employee. We're going to call this my name Neil. 144155122 as the salary, and submit it. So there's an error for this. Let's go figure out why there's an error for this. So I figured it out. It was because I was mapping the class's controller to created employee, whereas it should have been create employee, because create employee is what the form was forwarding it to. So this time around it works. Let's try that again. Neil and 155513335555 as the salary. And as we can see here, it works. Let's go into the MySQL database. Let's refresh it. And as you can see, it's entered. So that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe. And if you have any questions, comment. I really appreciate it. Thanks.